Okay, so at this point, everyone should be able to see us. We might have a few more people come in, but we'll get started. Welcome everyone to the Rise kickoff event. My name is Jacob Blasny, and I'm one of the exec members with Rise. For anyone who's not part of Rise and is joining us, we are the Student Entrepreneurship Society at Rose-Hulman. This year, we'll be hosting monthly speakers, and we'll also be including some workshops to help students prepare for the summer mentorship that's happening next summer, as well as a startup weekend this fall. Feel free to reach out to me after the session if you have any questions about Rise or want to join the Balz. Today, we're joined by a guest speaker, and the way we'll be running it is start with an interview. We'll have Tim tell us some stories for the first half, and then after that, we'll open it up to a Q&A where anyone can ask any questions. I recommend that you guys drop your questions in the Q&A section as we talk, and then toward the end, when we start opening up for questions, feel free to raise your hand, and you can ask your questions directly. And we'll hand you the mic and you can kind of join the stage. So now let me introduce our guest speaker. This is Tim Balz. As a student at Rose-Hulman, he created the Maker Lab as well as Make It Happen. He graduated in 2017 with a degree in mechanical engineering and went on to work at SpaceX. Today, he's the founder and CEO of Kalogon, and I will not spoil the rest. I'll let him share as much as he wants. So we'll begin by asking you to just give us a brief overview of what Kalogon is. What do you guys sell? What do you do? What's your mission?
I should have brought one of our products here, but poor preparation on my part. So Kalogon effectively has created the world's first smart cushion. So every year, more than 60,000 people die from pressure sores in the US alone. That's more than almost double car accidents and more than any cancer other than lung cancer. But the best tech available to prevent these sores is older than the personal computer. It's like 50 plus years old. So what we do is our cushion, when you sit on it, can detect how you're sitting, and using machine learning and eventually AI actually automatically adjusts and moves around to ensure that blood flow doesn't get cut off, which is the primary reason that people get these sores. And so the cushion is also the world's most comfortable cushion because it moves and adjusts and personalizes to you. Right now we're selling into the wheelchair market, but we've got our eye on also going with things like office chairs and beds and things like that.
Okay. Where do you want to, go with this interview? Do you want to talk a little bit more about what's happening right now, or we can step all the way back and just get a sense of how you came here? What do you prefer?
Let's go back, because then some of the stuff will make more sense because it's kind of all connected pretty well.
Yeah, you've got a really interesting set of stories that lead up to here. So I guess we can start. You want to go back to high school with your wheelchair foundation?
Yeah, so in high school, I founded a charity that refurbishes electric wheelchairs. We get away over 150. And a lot of these wheelchairs would have cost $30,000 for people. And not a lot of people can afford that, especially back then. There were a lot of insurance issues with fraud. So a lot of people who needed wheelchairs weren't getting them. Took that international and still run that today. Not nearly as big, but we still rebuild wheelchairs. So yeah.
And so is that something that helped you get into Rose, and something that you kind of talked about getting in as a freshman?
Well, so for me, I actually got Rose deferred, which is basically, at least from what I've been told, is effectively a denial on my application 2 or 3 times. And what happened was after the third time, I just drove down to Rose-Hulman, and I'd kind of done this business fundraiser where I got a bunch of companies to pay to put coupons on a calendar that I made for my charity. And then I got people to pay for the calendar because there were such good coupons on it. And then I had our school club sell that instead of selling those crappy food books where it's you don't actually get that much money. And so I had a couple calendars left over, and I just drove down and said, I want to talk to whoever's in charge. And this guy named Jim Gerker, who recently, he's still kind of part of Rose, but he was I think he was the highest, like director of admissions or something like that at that point. And I'm like, hey, look at this business stuff I did. Also, by the way, speaking of business, you'd be really stupid not to accept me now, because if you deny me and I, transfer in here my senior year and pay 1/4 the price, you're going to look really dumb, because that's what's going to happen if you don't accept me now. And then I apparently that worked, and I got an acceptance letter like 3-4 days later.
Wow. That's lots of audacity there.
There was a lot of bluffing. I'm like, I actually had this like near full ride to Purdue because of like this award thing I won, and I turned it down. But he didn't know I didn't have that, so I'm like, I'm just going to go to Purdue and then just save a bunch of money and come back here as a senior. But really, I planned, if that didn't work out, I was just not going to go to college.
Wow, did not know that. That's definitely news to me. Why did you want to go to Rose so bad? Like, what drove you to drive down here and do that?
Well, I guess so. For me, I still want to keep running my charity, which is based out of the Indianapolis area. And so really there were two good engineering schools that were my options, Purdue and Rose. And for me, I started out high school very really low GPA, 2-point-something GPA. Had a guidance counselor told me I would never go to college, and I wasn't smart enough for college, and put me in took me out of the honors English class and all that. And but I had this teacher who really believed in me and treated me as an individual and not just a number. And that person changed my life. And I knew that if I went to Purdue, I found out about weed out classes and how their whole business model is set up as, hey, we need to guarantee we can fail a certain percentage of students in our undergrad, the early years, because that's when we make our big profit. And if we fail a certain percentage, then we can pay for our grad programs. And I felt with that not individual attention, that because I barely could get into Rose, and probably barely got into Purdue, that I would likely get weeded out, and I didn't want to be treated like a number. So I felt Rose wouldn't treat me like a number, and so I was all in.
Wow.
And if I figured I was going to fail out anyways at Purdue, why go waste 2 years failing out at Purdue when I could come to Rose and then bug on my professors for help when I needed it? So
yeah, that's definitely just. Professors are just always available here, so that's definitely nice.
Yeah, I still bug my professors.
Yeah, so from what I've seen, when I talk to professors about you or see professors mention you, they all just love you. At least
they're awesome. All the Rose professors they're just all great, good people. Yeah. The key was with them is when I asked for help, I took their feedback and used it. And so they like that, because a lot of people ask for help just because they want the easy way out. But I would ask for help and go do things with that help, and everyone seemed to always like that. But yeah, and then ventures too at Rose was a huge thing for me. As a freshman, before I got accepted into Rose, I got a job offer from Ventures, because one of the clients was doing an all-terrain wheelchair and read about me in a news article thing. And was like, hey, this guy said it. I said a news article when I was trying to get Rose to accept me. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Rose-Hulman. So, and I was like, if I say that enough, Rose maybe will accept me. And so he'd read that and was like, hey, this guy's going to Rose-Hulman. You should hire him. And so at Ventures, one of the project managers reached out and was like, hey, I'd like to hire you. And I'm like, great, I haven't been accepted yet. Can you help me out with that? And he's like, oh my God. But in the end, when I got accepted, so I went to Ventures, and that's the next wheelchair thing I did. I helped invent an all-terrain wheelchair. It's got tracks on it. A lot of disabled veterans use it. I had no idea what I was doing with engineering at that point, but I still got my name on the patent, which was pretty cool. And that was how the wheelchair thing kept continuing into my Rose education.
Got it. And did that lead into Make It Happen then, or was there?
Oh, that was a couple more years.
Okay.
So what that did lead into is I spoke at a conference for FIRST Robotics, and a VP of Intel was there, and he really liked my speech and was told one of the hiring managers, hey, hire this person. But that summer I wanted to work at Ventures again after my freshman year, because then I could still run my charity. And so the lady was like, hey, what's it going to take for you to come work at Intel? This VP, I really don't want to go back and disappoint him. And I'm like, Intel it's electrical. I'm mechanical. I don't want to work there. She's like, just make up your own internship. So I skipped a bunch of classes and wrote a business proposal because she told me that she would run it by the CEO of Intel if I design my own internship if I did something cool enough. So I wrote a proposal to make the world's first IoT connected wheelchair. And the CEO apparently liked it because then as a freshman, 2 weeks later, I was interviewing PhD candidates to work for me. And so I had a team of 5 people and then effectively an infinite budget. They never told me what my budget was, and they never denied an expense. So I assumed it was basically infinite because it's Intel and I'm used to running on shoestring for everything. But yeah, so it was super cool. That project went awesome, coolest internship ever. Intel did a great job supporting the team, and I had an awesome team of people, and we made the world's first connected wheelchair. And then Stephen Hawking heard about it because Intel did a lot of his tech, and so he actually endorsed it publicly. And so Intel then named it the #1 IoT device of 2014. It was a top 10 news story the day the iPhone 6 came out. One of the founders of Google heard about it and came to meet me, and it was super cool. And that was all just because I did FIRST Robotics, happened to speak at a conference, got lucky, and some guy was like, this kid's kind of cool, I'd like him to work for me. And then they gave me an opportunity, said make something up. And so instead of going to class and passing tests, I just went all in, full send, and got super lucky.
Holy cow. How old were you interviewing these PhD candidates? Or
it was so awkward. I was 19. It was real weird. When I'm all these news stories, Intel actually coached me. They're like, "You're not 19, you're 20. You're not 19, you're 20." Because they're like, 20 sounds way older, Tim. You're gonna tell everyone you're 20. So in most of the interviews, it says Tim Balz is 20-year-old, but I was actually 19.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Wow.
It was cool. So then Make It Happen came soon after that, and the Maker Lab actually both. So my sophomore year, totally kicked my butt. Rose, IME sophomore year is tough. And, I barely got in, so obviously I'm not as strong academically as a lot of other students, or at least it didn't come easy for me. I had to put in a lot of hours. And so sophomore year was mainly just getting through Rose. And then junior year is whenever I did kind of started both Make It Happen and Maker Lab. And there was someone else that kind of started Maker Lab, but it kind of died. They just had one bench and a Harbor Freight toolbox was all that Maker Lab was. Not even toolbox, one of the do-it-all $100 Harbor Freight, the really crappy ones that everyone buys and then throws away. Yeah. That was all a Maker Lab was. And then those people left. And then I was like, hey, I got a space in the BIC. I got a name. This seems really cool. And I always loved building things. So that's kind of how the Maker Lab started. Yeah. And then Make It Happen was interesting because I saw a problem with, at that point, the maker movement hadn't really caught on at all at Rose. And, me and a couple of my friends, we built some cool crap. But a lot of other people too much schoolwork. I don't have time to build anything in my free time. And then I had people I knew who didn't even know how to use a drill, and they were IMEs. And I was like, this is bad. This is you really should be in the Maker Lab. And they're like, I don't have time. So at the same time, I had a lot of nonprofit stuff. I'd actually just taken my charity international and actually smuggled wheelchairs into Moldova. Really cool story about that. Probably shouldn't do it on something that is recorded, but I can tell that story to other people offline. So when I was over there, I realized there were a lot of opportunities for relatively simple custom engineering solutions that would change people's lives. And so I put 2 and 2 together, and I'm like, wait, what if I did an independent study and got course credit? So then I have free time to do the work because I'm getting a grade for it. And somehow I just got someone to give me money to pay for the project. And then we go to these people that, capitalism has failed because they have unique problems that without engineering support, they don't have the money or the engineering support to solve. That problem would never get solved because there's no market there. And I put 2 and 2 together, and we did a pilot where we had this kid in Moldova who had a surgery go wrong. And at 4 years old, went from being totally normal to not being able to walk anymore. He had brain damage. But his mom had held him and like would put his feet on hers and like rubber band or just like try to balance her feet on hers and just walk. It was trying to teach him how to walk, which is actually a technique that is often used in the US, but we put people in robots and the robots teach them perfect gait. There's also other equipment, but she was just doing this on her own and got to the point where he could like almost stand, but he was gotten too big. And they basically said like, he's not going to be able to progress any farther. So me and 3 other Rose students made a custom gait trainer, like by kind of modifying a device that you use for something similar in the US, but making it custom for him and one that he could grow into, like really tricking it out, like adding lights, adding his name, giving him like a tray so that he could like play with things on it. And we did this in a matter of like a month and a half or probably less, a lot of all-nighters. And then I smuggled it over to Moldova. And like a month later, I got a video of him walking without any support other than just holding onto a shopping cart. So like, that's when I realized like this model is such a good model because engineers, we have the, like in a month and a half of like 2 credit hours worth of work, we are the reason, these 4 students are the reason that this guy can walk now. Like, how insane is it that all of us have the power to do that? It's absolutely crazy. And that's where Make It Happen. I was like, we got to try to replicate this. And, you know, I knew a lot of times we were lucky the first one went well because things like that, as with everything with engineering, it's like a startup. You're probably going to fail 3 out of 4 times to solve the need because engineering problems are complex. Solutions that work are difficult. And that's why a lot of innovations are pretty much always built off of things that work in other industries. And like, that's when I knew that there was something there. And so we raised a little bit of money, and that's effectively how Make It Happen started. The need was there, like with Maker Lab. There were students that didn't know how to use drills who were MEs. Okay, we need a place where they can go and on their own time learn how to use tools. Maker Lab. There are all these engineering problems, and then there are the people that don't have the free time to do the work. Let's give them course credit. Let's solve these nonprofit problems. And that's effectively where Make It Happen started.
Nice. So I can see like clearly you're not even, it's nice that at Rose, you're not necessarily limited by being forced to like have revenue, have income to find a problem and then solve it. And so that's what you kind of took advantage of when you're here. Yeah. Because there are the resources available here.
Yes. And you can get money for projects too. Like it's not hard at all to find an alumni to sponsor a project or like I got Institute Advancement to sponsor multiple projects. I just went there and I said, I have this really cool idea. Trust me, I'm going to follow through on it. And you guys are used to dealing with way more zeros than I've ever seen as a student. I eat ramen and like I work 3 jobs just to pay for gas and try to keep me from going totally broke with student debt. I need like $500 for this project. And they're like, psh, that's a cool project. Like $500. Yeah. And they would work with me as a student. So normally they deal with alumni, but Institute Advancement was like sponsored projects. There was iProp would sponsor projects. The Brandon Innovation Center, Bill Klein, he was awesome. If he had a cool project, he would fund it out of his, he had the, these kind of slush fund side budget for materials. He would use that for cool projects. There's so many opportunities to find money and resources at Rose. Like as a startup now, I wish I had all the resources at Rose. The things I would do with the free resources you guys have, like take advantage, like take full advantage.
Yeah, it's definitely inspirational hearing you like just use everything that's available to you while you're here.
You gotta be scrappy.
Yeah. So I guess, do you feel like within those few projects that you worked on, that you started seeing like, oh, like entrepreneurship is something I'm interested in? Did you realize that already coming into it, or like what was your journey of like realizing you want to maybe start a company in one day or something like that?
Yeah, at first I really didn't understand. I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I just kept seeing problems, and I loved like fixing problems. That's engineers, we love doing that. And I just started hearing from like Bill Klein, and like actually Rise. I still remember there was this really big Rise event my freshman year. And I don't even remember why I went. I think it was on like a Saturday. But I go, and then like Mike Hatfield and a couple other like really badass Rose founders were there. And I was like, oh, these people are so cool. Like, oh, they're entrepreneurs. Like, that's what that is. And they're like talking about how they start a company and how I still remember Hatfield, which if you know Hatfield, he's not like the biggest sports guy, but he made the best like sports analogy. He talked about how startups are, you have to see where the world's going and see where problems are going. And like a quarterback, you don't throw it to the wide receiver, you throw it in front of the wide receiver. And I still remember that quote and thinking like these guys are I want to be like these guys when I grow up, start companies and solve problems on a scale that, you know, I'd never imagined possible. And so I just went, and afterwards I just walked up to them and talked with them. And then Hatfield started mentoring me. Klein would mentor me, and basically people were like, hey, what you're doing is entrepreneurship, and it's what these people did. And that's kind of how I really, so actually Rise was kind of the point where I started to learn I should be an entrepreneur, or at least that it was a career path. I didn't know it was a career path before.
Awesome. I hope that's good to hear to everyone who's listening.
Yeah. You see that wasn't planned.
Yeah. And also it's awesome that now you're in the position of Mike Hatfield.
Oh yeah. But he's still way cooler than me though. He's still way cooler. One day I want to be like him still.
Okay. Yeah. You still have something to look forward to.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Still a tall ladder to climb. I still got a long way to go.
Yeah. So do you think that at this point, you want to talk a little bit about SpaceX, or do you want to focus more on what happened after and how's it going now?
SpaceX kind of came next, so we can jump to SpaceX. So after all the stuff with like Intel and all the wheelchair stuff, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, but I still distinctly remember going to the career fair. And normally I did well at the career fair. I'm like, hey, I kind of run this charity, and like I did these cool projects, and I was like, I had a good handful, like 3 or 4 companies that I thought I could get hired from. But then like all the companies that I used to have really interested were all like, oh, we don't do wheelchairs. We don't want to work here. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm like a one-trick pony now. And so I knew that I didn't know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, but I knew that I loved engineering. So I said, what company works you the hardest, the most hours, and will make you learn the most? And I'm like, oh, people are like, oh, that's SpaceX. Like, if you don't want to have a life, like go to SpaceX. You'll work crazy hours. And so I'm like, oh, I'll go intern there. And then I just like totally fell in love with it. Like, I actually remember as an intern, I didn't think I wanted to go there full time, because I just wanted to learn there as an intern and then figure out what I want to do with my life. And then Gwen Shotwell, who's the president, I think it was my second or third day as an intern. She was down at our site in Texas. And I was like, well, I don't really care if I get fired because I don't ever actually want to work here. So I walked up to her and I was like, hey, I have this idea. And then she's like, I can't listen to your idea because I don't know you yet. And then she sat down with me for 15 minutes as this like intern who looks like he's 12, and like asked me what college I went to, talked to me about how she had friends that went to Rose-Hulman who she had a huge amount of respect for. And then finally she's like, oh yeah, and what was your idea? And I told her, I said I want to be the first person to propose from space, but I even had like a plan for it. And I was like, we're gonna write on the interstage, and then like whenever the webcast goes, it'll do it. And initially she says, yeah, well, that's probably doable. And then after emails and everything, she's like, actually, this is probably a bad idea. But it was the fact that the president of that company, with well over 5,000 employees, like wouldn't hear what I had to say until she got to know me. I was like, okay, like the people leading this company, I really believed in. You know, she's pretty good. Elon's a bit crazy, but she is like a total badass. And then after getting to climb up and down rockets all summer and do some really crazy projects in Texas, I was like, hey, I want to go here full time. And that's how I ended up in Florida, because I realized if our launch rate was going to go up and we're going to be re-landing rockets and we're going to launch them over and over, that at the factory, they're only going to get to play with a rocket here or there, but everyone at the launch pad is going to get to play with lots of rockets. So I joined the refurb team because I wanted to take apart rockets and put them back together and figure out how to do it. So I was the first external hire to join that team. And yeah, I can keep going on SpaceX. If you want me to go through my whole SpaceX, I can do that. I can give you like I don't know what people want to hear, but I can give you like the Spark Notes version of it too.
Let's see. I wonder if we could even. I think we will. I guess what do you want to talk about? I think we definitely do want to get to more Kalogon. I think there's some interesting stuff you've got to share there, and then I'm sure people have questions about SpaceX that they can ask in the Q&A.
Oh, perfect. That works for me.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you want to know about Kalogon?
So you're working at SpaceX, right? From the start, like, are you planning on working on something else, planning on doing your own thing, or are you just working at SpaceX and trying to think of something on the side that, you might want to start up? How is that going?
Yeah. So for me, I always kind of believe that the best companies are about the team and ideas are a dime a dozen. And so I started maybe planning, plotting, like I started like looking at what was my escape from SpaceX and how would I have hit the ground running with a really badass team. And so it hit me that, I'd always kept like a list of all the best engineers I'd worked with. So I'm like, these are the people that I want to start a company with someday. And so I actually called them all and said, I have a crazy idea. I'm going to go buy this house. I found a loophole in the zoning rules so that we can, in a residential property, run a business. And the loophole is it was partially ag zoned, like agriculture. So if we ever got reported for running a business on the property, we just had to buy like a chicken or a goat, and then we could legally do it. And so then I bought this house, got all these people to quit their day jobs, moved down to Florida, and then I was able to pay for the house each month by them renting it, and half of the house we converted to a super badass lab and workshop. Like at that point was probably about as good, or in some ways was even like better than the BIC. Some ways the BIC now is way better than what we had. But so they all quit their jobs, and like the top 5 out of 6 people that I had on that list moved down. Everyone got day jobs at like Northrop, SpaceX, NASA, whatever. And by nights and weekends, we just started looking for problems to solve. And so we had this really awesome team. We started working together, and we bootstrapped, and actually we built a data recorder that SpaceX actually used for a bit. And then realized that, we're not really, we all wanted to do a startup because we wanted to change the world. And so, the data recorder at first was like really cool. We're like, oh, we have SpaceX and you'll put it on rockets and all that. But at the end of the day, when you're working, 60 hours a week at SpaceX and 20 to 30 almost at your startup, and it's not really changing the world, I just didn't have any passion for it. And we decided to kill it off and go back and just start interviewing people and said, what are the biggest challenges in industries that we thought innovation had failed? And so, so then we went out in the community, interviewed like elder care, like disability, people with disabilities and all that. And that's where we found pressure sores was a huge unmet need. And so we had a great team of engineers. We had a really great problem. And then at that point, you just solve the problem.
What led you to, did you start in the elder care space, or did you, what led you to go there specifically to solve problems?
So we started with making some theories, or make some educated guesses and like developing some theories. So one of those theories was that with the number of people, the number of people hitting retirement age is an insane, it's an insane rate that people just don't understand. And all the products for them are designed for, people that didn't know how to use a cell phone. But all these people now that are aging in have been using emails and cell phones for over a decade. And so we thought that there's probably some unsolved needs there. We also looked into like different types of like farming. So if we could do like more sustainable farming, and think like one idea we had was like, okay, cage-free eggs or free-range chickens. If we can find some innovation that helps reduce their cost, then now they can start competing better on price with the like horrible practice farming. And we said like, hey, this is becoming a thing that people are wanting more environmentally, sustainable and responsible food. So we thought that's a wave that's coming that, with Mike Hatfield's quote with the quarterback, we're like, hey, that's something that's coming, that the demand is increasing. and we can ride that demand wave by creating solutions that really solve problems that aren't quite there yet, but that are coming.
Yeah. Great.